Ghana Private Road Transport Union, GPRTU, has issued a memo to all of its branches across the country to adjust transport fares to reflect the slump in fuel prices on the Ghanaian market. After a series of negotiations with the Ghana Road Transport Coordinating Council, public transport service providers agreed fares to slash fares actually by some 15.3%. However, some drivers are still reluctant in enforcing the reduction in the fares. To reinforce that position, GPRTU has tabled a memo to all of its local branches across the country. Here are excerpts on your screens right now of what it is that the GPRTU is asking its members to comply with. Of course, it reads that the general public may recall that on Saturday, the 29th of October, a 19% upward adjustment in public transport fares took effect after the intense negotiation with stakeholders. With the recent reductions in the price of petroleum products, it became necessary to engage stakeholders to give consideration to review the fares in line with the administrative instrument. Consequently, a series of negotiations and meetings were held with stakeholders to agree on the acceptable level of fare reductions commensurate with the current fuel prices. And beyond that, the group is indicating that following these negotiations and in consideration of the plight of the drivers, commuters and the general we have resolved to reduce the existing transport fares by some 15.3%. And so that fare will cover fare taxis, intercity transport, and haulage tracks as well. I want to bring in now Samuel Amwa. He's member of the National Communications Team for the GPRTU. Samuel, thank you for your time. In fact, you're not the only ones trying to readjust, because what we do know is that the Used Clothes Dealers Association in Kantamanto are also doing same. But Samuel, let me, even before we hear from your counterparts dealing in used clothes in Kantamanto, I just want to hear from you what practical steps you're taking now to engage your members who are reluctant in reducing the fares.
Yeah, thank you very much. Let me say good afternoon to your viewers. When we had a meeting with the transport minister, we agreed that the transport fares, must be reduced by 15.3%. So quickly, we signed a communique, and at the same time, the normal procedure that we used to use whenever we increase our fares, we use the same procedure by doing our calculations in terms of our...
Samuel? Well, we've lost someone there, but we'll just try as much. Okay, Samuel, we'll ask you briefly on the point you're making. Samuel, if you could just take that for us again.
Yes, what I was saying is that the procedure that we used to do, or we used to take whenever we are increasing our transport fare, that is the same procedure we used. We did our calculation just after the meeting with the transport minister, just after the agreement was made. We did our calculations and we wrote a circular. We sent it across, all the assistant regions, and we also asked them to send it down to their various branches and the locals to make sure that they go by these directives. That is a 15.3, reduction. So our expectation was that all our members will comply with these directives, and the compliance was there. Although yesterday we had some few challenges from other places. When we had information, we reached them, and then some of them were saying that the letters couldn't reach them on time. That is why they couldn't do the adjustment. So we quickly asked them to do so. And some too, we find out that some of the challenges was also coming from the floaters that are not belonging to any of the associations. So as of now, we are making sure that all our members will comply strictly by the calculation that we have made and send it to all of them for them to go by it.
So what do you feel is that major factor accounting for that reluctance on the part of some of your members in terms of reducing the fares, just to be in line with what it is that you've directed them to do? Samuel, if you can hear me, I'm just asking why you feel there's some sort of reluctance on the part of your members in reducing the fares in spite of this memo and directive that you're issuing to them.
Yes, as I said earlier, when the complaints started coming, we find out that, this has been, I think, the second time that this reduction is coming. And, some of them were finding it a bit difficult to do the calculation. And then also, we also got to know that the calculation we did and the circular we sent couldn't reach most of the members, on time. That is why most of them were not complying. But as I'm speaking now, those areas that we find out that they are not complying, quickly we call the leadership and we make sure that they are all compliant.
So going forward, what would you want commuters to know in terms of how the prices have reduced?
Yes, what I want every commuter to understand is that most especially the floating, drivers that don't belong to any of the association, whenever there is an increment, is the GPRTU and the GRTCC together with the Transport Ministry that we meet before an information will come. Then, based on our information, they all, adjust to it. They make sure that the increment, they also enjoy the increment. So now that we've also come out with a reduction, the same way they also have to, adjust and, comply. Although they don't belong to our association, they all have to comply because these are the directives that we represent all the transport operators across the country. So they must, go by this 15.3, percent reduction, so that there will be peace and then there will be sanity on our roads.
And earlier this week, when I was interacting with you, you pointed out that spare parts were part of some of the challenges you're experiencing in terms of the cost build-up. Has that been out of the way, or at least dealt with by the various stakeholders, i.e. the Abosokan spare parts dealers, or the trades ministry?
Can you come out again?
I was just talking about the spare parts bit. You were complaining that it was part of the cost build-up, a reason for which you would want some you want the prices of the spare parts to be reduced. So in effect, we can have a further reduction in transport fares. I'm asking if any engagements have happened in line with that.
Yes, we had the Spare Parts Dealers Association, came out that spare.
Samuel? We've lost.
We still want the government or the ministry to also, Ministry of Trade, to also go in there to make sure that since the dollar is coming down, they also have to comply, because we use all these calculations to do in terms of transport fare review. These are the calculations we normally use. The spare part comes in, the lubricant comes in, and also the taxes also comes in. So should these spare parts, come down a little bit more, it may even, push us also to, think of maybe reducing our transport fares whenever the fuel prices also comes down.
Samuel Amwa, I'm grateful. He's a member of the National Communications team for GPRTU.